Welcome everyone, thank you for coming. Today I will be talking about bash scripting. As you see, this is part one. I try to go over some fundamentals to intermediate concepts, and then I'll also go over some real world situation and practices that I have faced, and just small scripting that I have done. So I'm gonna start with some introduction, and so if you want to divide or categorize the importance of bash scripting, four main section comes to mind. First and foremost is the automation that you might know bash scripting from automation actually. So for the file management backups, for the sake of efficiency and less error in a repetitive tasks that we get, we use bash scripting. In terms of system monitoring, we do use bash for checking system health, the resources that is being used, corrective actions, software deployment, installation, configuration, and also notification. We can also always put some notification at the end, so when a task is done, we can get notified in different ways, email or SMS or help subsystem even. For data processing, it helps us in text parsing, file manipulation, batch renaming, and also it provides tools for data scientists and developers, which could come handy. And so the power of bash script comes from its simplicity, but yet the flexibility. When we go forward, you'll see that data types, variables are pretty easy defined and used, but that makes it very much flexible in the tools that we want to define. Yeah, let's jump next. A little bit of a history. So bash, or the Born Again shell, is a Unix shell and command language written by Brian Fox for the GNU project as free software replacement for Bourne shell. First released in 1989, then it grown to be default shell for different OSs, including Mac OS, till actually till 2019, till Catalina version of macOS. It was the default shell. And then I guess they switched to Z shell, ZSH, after that. So it grown to be very much popular. Just to overview, we're gonna learn some basics now. Variables, data types, loops, functions, and then most of the time we're going to go through VS Code and just try to run different commands and see how it goes. Like many languages, we have conditional statements, the things that we put in the if parentheses to see if that condition is true or false. And there are different ways, even more than this, which we can implement in our conditional statement. If we use an exclamation point before our expression, it checks if that expression is false. If we add -n before our string, it checks if there is actually number of characters in that string. Not counts it, but it checks if it's not empty. It should be more than 0. And Z is for the 0, so -Z checks if that string is empty. Double equal checks if both string matches. and so on. One of the common things that we see in most of the Bash installation or Bash scripting that we see on GitHub or anywhere is the -EQ, -GT, and -LT. It's pretty straightforward. EQ is equal, GT is greater than, and LT is less than. And one of the main and most common uses of these conditions is actually when you want to take some arguments. So you have a command which takes a couple of arguments, and you want to check how many arguments user have provided. And if they didn't provide anything, we go by the default. If and I'm going to show all in code, so we're just talking concept right now. Yeah, if it's like more than 2, we might need the program to do some other stuff as well. If it's less than some specific number, so on. -D flag, check for if the file is actually a directory, is a folder or not. -E checks if that file exists. -R, W, and X checks for permission if we have a read, write, and execution permissions. And S checks for the size. That's not just an empty file. It has size bigger than 0. Variables. So variables in Linux and in Bash, particular, divides into 2 different types: system defines and user defines. Usually, it's a standard convention that the ones with the capitals are the system defines and manages by the OS, like $home that we'll see in front later on. That what's the value of that? It's your home folder, by the way. Spoiler alert. And we usually define our own variables with the lowercase, but it doesn't mean that we cannot define them in uppercase as well. We can do that. It's just a standard convention. In terms of data types, it's pretty simple, and simple doesn't just define it well, but it's very much basic. It only accepts strings, numeric, and arrays of different actually different data types, I guess. If you have noticed, they don't call it integer or float, and just handling a float you need to use different commands, or it's not embedded in the shell itself. So it only accepts numbers like as integer, and for the float you have to find a workaround. Because basically at first I believe it was not created for calculation. It was created for sets of commands and automation and doing repetitive stuff. We got 3 different loops, as so many programs. For loop, you might all know. We loop for a certain amount of time that we want, we define it. We had a while loop and until loop, which they're pretty similar. So while loop repeats the code block until the condition is false. So while this is true, do this and that. And it keeps doing it till it gets false condition. And until is kind of reverse. It's just for more readability, I would say. So until repeats the code block until it gets to the true condition. So it's always false by default. It keeps doing it till it reaches to the true condition. That's mostly it. So we're gonna jump through the VS Code, I have prepared some codes, which is the font need to be bigger?
Sure. Yeah, definitely it does. Oh, there we go.
Good enough? And we also need a terminal somewhere. Let me just get the font bigger a little bit. Preferences. Okay. Yeah, maybe 16. How does it look? Alright. Is it good enough? Font? Alright. So I'm just gonna put this out for now. Let's go line by line. Here we're gonna just explore what variables do and how it works. So first of all, we put .sh after our files in bash script when you wanna write a bash script. If you don't put it, it's fine, it's still runnable, but that's just for, it's just convention, we do that. We should add the address of the shell that we want to run our script in. So my bash program is in /user/bin and /bash. And you might wonder, where do I get that from? Because I definitely am not memorizing all of this. So with the command, which, just actually take a sip. We got two commands here. One is where is and bash, and it gives out different paths of the program that we are actually looking for. For the sake of the matter, so for example, if you have different version of Python and we want to use a specific version, we can just write where is Python, and then it shows all the version of Python that we have installed on our machine, and we can use the specific address to that specific version. But if you want to check which one is the default and being used, we use the which command, and it gives out the address. So use the hashtag, hash or shebang, also they call it, hash and exclamation point, and then the address, so that we tell to the OS where do you need to run this from. I'm going to talk about the permission after end of this file. These are the example of system-defined variables. So in the last session, if you were in session of Vanlog, Kim actually showed us lots of things about system variables, list them all down. I'm not gonna go through that again for sure, but that was really valuable. I learned a lot of things there, especially the history command was really useful for me. I was always looking for the previous commands that I needed them. So, for example, what does home system variable holds? What kind of a value does it hold? So we can just copy paste it here, and the echo command, or sorry about that. So echo command, it's a print, like simply prints out the variable in our terminal. And we are just gonna print two arguments. One is the string before, and one is the variable that we want. So it takes two arguments, we put them together, and it's supposed to add a tab just after the first one, for just sake of beauty. Yeah, just be neat. Anyway, so the home variables holds the address of my home directory, and this is my home directory. What about the path or shell? Let me just copy these. So this is my path, I have different paths because I have so many programs different in the computer, so there are different paths aggregated together. And this is my shell. So I'm not using actually bash, I'm using Z shell. And there are differences to that. So I can actually put this address into my script and say, run these sets of commands in my Z shell. And there are like really small differences. There are not much big differences, but just for the sake of it, we can actually run bash, go to a bash script, and then run the first one again. I just want to ask a question after that. Close. This is messed up. Here. Here.
The quotation.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I entered bash. I'm in a bash now, not a Z shell. That was my default. I have two different shell in my Linux. So when I write that, something happens. Can somebody locate it? What's the difference between this one and that one? I can go back and run that too, just so you know. So I'm in a Z shell now. What's the difference between these two lines? The tab, thank you. So in my Z shell, by default, it understands the escape characters like the /tab or
New line.
there are others as well, right? The /n go to the new line. Why I believe that the echo by default in Z shell is echo-e, which is the it understands the escape characters. But in the original bash, it does not understand it unless, let me go back to bash, unless I add a -e. Now it understands it. Now it doesn't print out the /tab, but it actually prints out a whole tab, or 4 spaces, technically. So that's the difference why you should actually define what kind of address you're using on top so that you know what kind of a shell you are using. Going through the user-defined variables. So this is just a simple one. I use the convention to make it a lowercase. My name, my last name, and when I echo out, oh, sorry, I have not. I should get the whole thing. When I don't have the variables, it doesn't know what to paste. So, do it again. So yeah, it prints out fine with the space included and everything. Note, if you want a variable to exist always when the system runs, or we open up our computer and we already have those variables set, we can put them in the RC file. So if we are using bash, it's bash RC. If you're using Z shell, it's ZSH RC. So for example, let me exit here, clear up. All right, I'm in a Z shell now. Okay, I want to add a variable. So I'm gonna edit my ZSH RC file. Okay, and if I come down, like at the end, I have some things set up here. So let's just add something here. I'm gonna say custom variable vanlog, all right? And I'm gonna set it to Burnaby vanlog. Actually, add space here. Vanlog, okay. And I'm gonna Control S, Control X, save and exit. So here I don't have it yet. I need to actually open a new tab so that new ZSHRC file is being read by the new program. And then when I echo that custom van dog, I have it in there. So if I want any sorts of function, variable, anything, if I want it to be persistent and always be in my system, I'm gonna put it in the RC file. These things on top, sorry for the, it's not visually aesthetic, but these are just the manual command that I defined for myself in my bash RC or Z RC file, so that I can use it easier. So if I, for example, want to check if I have internet, I just do net check and it just pings for me for in 111, because I don't want to write ping 111 every time. That's just quicker. So these are the small tweaks we can use. Or I always wanted to have the time that I booted up my system. I do have a little bit of obsession with the time management, and I always wanted to see like how long have it been open, or when did I start. And this is just a really personal thing, by the way. You don't have to do this. I have it printed out on top so that I always know. Anyway, okay, we're gonna stop here. Any questions about all this before we go forward?
Should we use a single quotation or double quotation? Why did you use the single one in your custom variable?
Okay, let me remember that. So the single quotation takes the string literally, and it actually depends on the shell that you're using, but usually double quotation, you can put variables inside that. You can add a function or another command output inside of it. But for the single quotation, it takes all the letters literal by literal, does not understand any variable or anything inside of it. Am I correct?
Close enough.
Yeah, okay. That was in your previous session, so that's where I remember it from.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, one question I have is how to tell the difference between system programs and the built-in commands of the shell. Because the shell had built-in commands
Yes.
and in it that it resolves if I remember correctly, it tries to resolve them first, or I'm not sure whether it tries to resolve them first or second, but then you have your system command, so it will have built-in ones.
Actually, I think I know the answer to that. Because I'm studying the Linux Professional Institute certification, the system looks for the built-in commands first, and then it looks for anything else, and it's based on location. So it's usually like /sbin or /bin or something like that. That's where you'd find most of the built-in ones, and then something else would be, /user/bin for custom created shells.
And it uses the path command.
Yes.
To define that.
Yeah.
So it goes to the path, and you can change the order if you want. You can change the order in which it looks for system commands.
Right, by changing the path, we change the order in which it's sought after.
Yeah, no, changing the path variable, you change the order that it will search up. But the thing is first is the built-in commands, which does it look at up first? Does it look up the built-in,
Yeah.
the bash command? Versus, and then therefore you'll have to explicitly declare, if you made a program with the same name, you have to explicitly declare it. Is that what
We can
you're
actually
saying?
try that in the 7th section. You can just go play around with it. Yeah, I don't know necessarily, like if I add echo command in my bash RC, which runs totally different things. For example, which echo is going to be run. Is
Yeah.
the system ones or the one that I defined?
Yes, that's what mine is.
Yeah,
The
that's
bash, the internal bash command version.
Do you mean if I had a Docker configuration file and then
Kind of stuff.
I declare a home variable?
No,
Or
it's,
a
it's, say
user-
if, let's say in bash, if they have ls has already been defined as part of the bash as if it's compiled
But
in.
definitely.
So you don't need that command on your system as part of bash itself. Then you can have your own compiled version from the utility. That version of ls can have more different set of features, and they're usually extended features. So how do you know which of the two are you running when you just type the command itself?
So as soon as you get a which, I think you will get the path of you are running that.
No, like which will it go?
The easiest way to do it is to use the which command. The which command will tell you which one
Which
runs.
command
Okay.
will tell you, so I have a custom ls, it is
Yeah.
ls, a flag with dash LAH, let's say.
That's an alien,
Okay.
that's a different thing, that's an alias.
Okay, right.
For check version of command, you may use MD5 sum hash and check that hash in the just within some bundle. And then you can compare what version of application of command do you use.
That's cool. We can try different scenarios at the end.
Yeah.
Because I do actually have some custom script which I don't run, I just go through it. So we probably have time at the end, so we can just
Okay.
play around. But that's a really good question. That's actually really nice. All right, let's
I have
go.
a question.
Yes, please.
What's the difference between double equal operator and dash DQ?
Come again, sorry.
What's the difference between double equal operator and dash DQ?
Dash EQ. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and condition.
That's for the numbers. So dash equals is check the numerics variables. EQ for the equal, or is it? That's actually a good question. Let me just go back to this conditional. Yeah. So integer 1 dash EQ integer 2. So it checks the numerics. And double equal is for string data types. It's just the data types difference.
Okay. And there's also, you can use double square brackets and single square brackets. I see like in bash scripts, all these people just
Yeah.
between two of those.
Yeah.
How you can know which one that you're gonna use?
Yeah. So actually, I think we have examples. Yeah, we have examples. So in a double parentheses, you said, or
Yeah, parentheses.
yeah. So the first one takes. The first one is looking for a variable, and the second one could calculate something for you. So that's why we need two of them together. So let us wait for the example. That's making more sense. There. All right. Let's go through the second one. Data type. Oh, actually, just to finish that up. So I said I'm going to talk about a permission. So when you create a file, just a random file, it doesn't have execution permission, so you cannot execute it right away. And you need to give the execution permission so it could be run. So let me take this path and here. Right. So if you run ls or la or dash lah or whatever you like to, it prints out the permission part. So as we can see, this variable sh, which is in color orange in this shell, and that color means something. it has the X's for all groups, user in the system. So it has the execution permission, but if I just create a new one, so like nano new script.sh, and then I do like user bin, right, and bash, and then I come down and say echo hello. That's it. So if I now check the permissions, I see that new one, which by the way, the color is not, the color orange is representing an executable here. So this is not orange and it does not have any X's. It's not executable. And how can we make it executable? With the chmod command, it does change the modifies our file, and then we add a +X, which says add execution permission +X, and -X, by the way, reduces if it has the execution. We don't want it, we can get it from. So this, and then new script. Now if we check, it has the execution, and we can just run it by dot, which is here in this folder, and then new script.sh, and types hello. Yeah, I think I covered this file. Are we going super slow or not? I don't know. All right, data types. So, I've just defined a couple of data types here, and we want to see how they are behaving, right? We got 2 strings, 2 integer, and we think we have a float, but we'll see that we might not have it. We got an array 1 that we put all of our predefined variables, and then we will echo string 1, string 2 without space. I want to run this command right after, so I'm going through it first. Then we want to echo, this is the double parentheses by the way, here. So we got to echo int1 plus int2, then equal, string, and then like the double parentheses that you had a question for. And we want to put them together here. And we just want to see what things is going to happen. We're like a try and error. And we also want to echo the float 1 that we defined there. It's just 3.14. And then we'll look at the other. Let's get them all. And it's kind of here. So, we have not used our array here, but I'm going to use it later on. So the first echo here, you just put the 2 strings together. So the first string _1 has the value of string 1, and the second one string 2 with the space in between. I've just added these details so that we can see it actually. So when we echo string 1, string 2, it put them all together. That's just an easy way to concatenate string types if you want to just add them together. The second echo, it prints out exactly the characters. So it understood the variable int1, but it doesn't understood the plus operation. And so what it means is, if we want them to actually, if we want to calculate them together and sum them up, we need to put them in double parentheses and a $sign before that. And how it happens is, the first parentheses and the double sign says that this is the variable, so you need to go search for it, look for it. And then the second one it could hold a function, so it kind of acts as a function, and it actually arithmetically sums them up. And therefore we have the actual sum over the in the right side of the equal. And the float, okay, the float does not help us here, but let's add them together, all right? So I'm not gonna use this part now. If we, okay, let me do it like this. So I'm gonna get this part. I'm gonna say echo, and then a dollar sign, parentheses, and then float. We just wanna add, basically multiply by 2, right? Wait a minute. So it works, right? How did it work though? I have tried it before.
That's the double bracket, just allows arithmetic operations inside it.
It understands float as well.
That's a double bracket.
Is that double?
Okay, I learned something today, so.
Yeah, double bracket is what you do for math.
That makes.
Make it one and then try it again. Make it one.
What do you mean?
One parenthesis.
One, oh yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's not gonna work. Yeah, it looks for the command 3.14 and there is no such
Check it
thing.
in bash.
In the bash?
Yeah.
Alright.
Try,
Yeah, might be a difference between bash and ZSH.
But still,
Command one. Because you didn't declare float one here. You have to declare it first. This is the new bash, new session. Right.
oh, correct. Yeah. You're right. Let me paste this here
One more time.
and then run. Yeah, same.
You need double brackets.
Yeah.
You need-
Yeah.
We're just like playing around, right? So, okay, like, good thing to know. So if it's in double parentheses, it can calculate arithmetic calculation. Yes,
Yep.
please.
I know int stands for integer. What's float? Can you define the term float? What that
It's with the point in between, or can
So like a
2 point
real number?
something, like anything between 2 integers.
okay, so
Yeah.
it's, so that, those would be in the category of real numbers. Real numbers include, you know, 3.14 is a real number.
Yeah. Yeah.
Suppose all those artificial.
Okay. Yeah.
Or in computer land, floats.
Yeah. All right. So I want to introduce this one that helps us calculate float, but apparently we don't need it. If you may know, this is a pipe, so you can pass in the left output of whatever is happening to the right, and technically we are printing out this one and give it out to BC. I'm not sure what BC stands for, by the way, but it's a different program, and it calculates the float for you. But now it's just useless because we can do it. We know we can do it a different way. All right. Yeah. That's about it. All right, and then we had this array, and if okay, so the @ sign in array creates iteration, like gives us the ability to iterate through and go through one by one. So it technically prints out. Doesn't print out. Print is not a good word for it, but spread them out, I can say. So when I echo with, by the way, this is the syntax, $, and then curly brackets, and then we name our array, and inside of the indexing we put @ sign as an iteration, I guess. Yeah, to go through it. and then we get all the values that we put earlier on. So it was string 1, string 2, integer 1, integer 2, and float. And here it is, all of them.
Is that list the elements of an array, is what you're saying?
Yeah. List them out, and we can use this part in a for example. Like if we list the files inside of a directory, we can put them in an array and then read them one by one in a for loop easier. This is really common. This syntax come really handy when using a for loop. So
Is it,
yes.
that add, it goes through, or it's for one-dimensional arrays, or does it, or it's row by row, takes one row, one?
Actually don't know.
It should be one dimension.
I have never used the two-dimensional array, and I never thought of it.
Yeah, I think you
But
must
that's a
use
really good
NumPy
question, yeah.
for this.
Oh, it should be fun.
Do you know, Kim, if we can have two-dimensional array in Bash?
Yes, you can. It's like an array of arrays.
Okay.
Okay, so you could only use that @ sign on like one dimension at a time.
One dimension at a time, okay. Good to know. I'm
Thanks.
learning lots of things here. All right, any question for this part? Yes, please.
Mine's 16. What happens if you get rid of the quotations around the equal sign? Will it do like assignments or?
It should consider, that's a good question, we can try. It should consider it as a character, because the plus sign here didn't work, so I'm assuming this one should be character as well. Yep. Because echo sees whatever we are giving them in front, like these are all, this is one argument, this is one argument, this is one, divided by the white space in between. These are all different arguments, so we are providing 2, 2, 5, we're providing echo with 5 arguments. It takes the first 4 as what it is, string, or in those 2 variables, and then the last one, it also a variable which can calculate. Yep. And yeah, so I guess that's why it prints out equal itself. Let me clear this again. Any other question? Yes.
Yeah, I want to mention that BC stands for basic calculator, am I right?
Cool.
Yes, and I have a question about arrays. Can you define the different separator? I see that you like define each element with a white space. Can you like instead of white space use like a comma or?
Actually, I think I have the
Combine them, I think, in the separator.
example somewhere.
Combine them in the separator and quotation space.
Yeah, it's actually a good thing because you can easily parse CSV file or tab separated TSV file. What was the V
Much
for?
better.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we do have it in front, I remember, because I particularly remember that.
Yeah, I think it's IFS variable. So you
Yes,
can,
yes.
yeah, you can define
And a
X
system
for
will
IFS,
define,
yeah,
yeah.
and select comma or something else, and this is gonna be like a separator.
Yeah, definitely. We have it in I don't remember which one these examples were there, yeah,
Oh,
this
here, yeah.
IFS here. So we're using, yeah, we're gonna get there. That's a good one though, we can parse different kind of data with that.
Yeah, and you mentioned about the first line where you define the path to the bash. It's called hashbang or shebang.
Shebang,
Yeah,
hashbang,
yeah,
yes,
shebang.
correct. Correct.
And I saw people, sometimes define it instead of the path, they select like user/environments, and then they choose
Yes.
bash. But I don't really understand how it works, if I'm seeing.
Me neither. I don't know about that actually.
Well, no, it's-
It's just that, the hash sign or pound, exclamation mark, that is the shebang.
Yeah.
And then you put the path after that.
I think what you mean is this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what's the difference exactly.
Yeah, no, the shebang is just something in the code, in the shell code, that it looks, if the first line of a file, if it's if the file is executed.
Sorry to stop you. What our question is basically is why is it /nv and then
Yeah, what is NV?
bash? What's the difference if we do user bin bash or like this? So what's the difference between these two? Both works fine.
Specific environment. For example, if you have like a Python tutorial
Okay.
environment, and you have multiple virtual environments, Python 3.11, 3.10, 3.9, once you type that command and Python, that's gonna bring the Python that you have. Python 3, Python 2.7, Python 2.9. So you don't have to pass what's there being Python 3
It's
or
gonna
Python
find-
3.11. That's gonna find the Python that you have. Same for the bash, same for any other.
Is it gonna get it from the path variable?
This guy from the environment.
The environment.
The environment.
Check the environment, and then it's gonna bring back the bash, the current bash. that
Now
you
it's
have.
better to imagine if you have two versions of bash, on
Yeah.
same system, and you use the environment one,
Mhm.
like Python. So you are using Python 2 in environment, so
Yeah.
we have shebang, exclamation mark, user bin, environment, and then we say Python 2.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Very nice.
clear.
Can I just ask?
Yes, please.
There are differences between various distros. Some use /env and then some use something else. So I'm just curious what distro this is.
Yeah, Ubuntu.
Ubuntu, okay, yeah. Because you have to be careful when you're specifying the environment,
Mhm.
what your distro
Yes.
requires,
Okay,
right?
thank you. Moving on to the next one, let's get into conditionals. So in the same folder of these conditionals, I have example.txt, which is just an empty file. But I added this too so that we can get things going. By the way, I'll give you the link to this repository. It's already online. You can just, if you want, later on. So here, first read command reads the input. It's like an input in Python. So we just want to get a number, and we are going to save it in the number variable. So P is print, if I'm not mistaken, and then we want to print this part and then read this number. And this is how read works. So when I run the command, you'll see that at the beginning, it's waiting for us to enter a number. And then we'll check that number to see if it's greater than 125. If it was, it says it was greater than 125. Just an example of how do we use this -GT flag. Then we define a string, input string, and then we check -n. What was -n? Anyone? Yes?
If string is equal 0, length of the string.
If the length is greater than 0.
Okay.
Yes. So yeah, if it was, then it types out the string is non-zero in length, and if it wasn't, which is not because we're hard coding it here, it's gonna go over the else. What important thing here is just in the So there are two types of syntax which are basically the same, but we need to write our if statement in a bracket and then semicolon, and then write then, and then a new line. It's really sensitive. I have had lots of headaches over this syntax. If you just stick to one, and yeah, you will not have any problem. But some people do this as well. They add a space, add a new line before that, and then after then, before and after then, and then do this. And how I memorized to put this at the end, it's like, this is finish F, by the way, Fi, but it's just the opposite. It's a flip side of a F, so F, Phi, that's how I memorized to do it. And this is like generally the syntax of an if-else statement. Yeah. Oh, and the third one checks for the example file. And -e is for exist. So if that example.txt exists in the same folder, unless we need to define the full path, then it says it exists. So let's just run this. I'm gonna go to the third one. So I'm going to the third one. Let's check for permission. It's orange. You can go ahead, but yeah, it does have permission. And then I type /conditionals sh. Enter a number. So let's put something above 125, right? So, oh damn,
256.
my padlock was off. So 500. The value is greater than 125, so the first if was accepted, and we went through this. And then the string is non-zero in length, of course, because, well, you type something, you can remove it and try again. And file template.txt exists. So I'm just gonna add one to this so that we make sure we go through the like the other scenarios. Now I'm gonna do actually less. Oh damn! Again. 100. So when it was 100, it actually does nothing, right? Because if this, do this, and there's no else, so it just passes this part. The next one says the string is 0 in length, so we went to the second scenario here, and no file exists. The echo of the second one works. So yeah, those are the examples. Questions? Yes, please.
As for the line 29, why do we need the code before the dollar sign?
I
I
think
think the dollar sign just means it's a variable, right?
Just making sure that it is available sometimes.
So we can delete the code?
I think because it does not necessarily knows that it could be a string. This variable could be anything. So we put them in a string because the flag that we're using also checks for the string. But I think I've tried without the code and I got an error. But let's just see. I might learn a new thing here. So now we have the string, so we should get the first part, the non-zero part. Whatever. Oh damn. I should turn this on.
Works.
So yeah.
Yeah,
It works.
I have a good explanation why. Let's suppose that you have your first parameter, or that variable, and that variable has space, like my space content. If you're expecting to handle those values or those information, like that one, hell, yeah, hell is not so good, but hell space low, that's gonna get just the first hell, or the hell, not the hell.
Yeah, we get an error here. The hell part. So what does it says?
These
Well,
are
you're
good
expected.
practice to be using the double
Yeah.
quotes. These are like some habits.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Just one complimentation here. On line 36, I don't believe you need that comma in the end of the after the yeah. I
This
believe
one.
you can remove this.
Oh, because of the
You
new
can write this
line?
now because of the new line.
Okay.
Like you expect this one when you put like multiple comments, and then you have the if and then, but if you put in the line below,
Nice, let's give it a try. Yep, works.
Yeah, cause the semicolon acts as in to say, break, it's a forced break.
Yeah, yeah.
It says, okay, this is the line, and then when you put the then after the semicolon, the shell interprets it as it's a new line after that.
Right. Makes sense?
So, but if you wanted to do the above one and removed it, you'll get an error.
Yeah, here you should get an error if you remove it. All right, anything?
Yeah, I've got two questions.
Yes, please.
Actually, do we have any flag for comparing the number, because we didn't have any? So for string, we use the flag -n, for existence of the file we have -e, but for the number of digits, we didn't use any. The second one is, I've seen sometimes.
Let's go one by one, sorry. The first one,
Do we have any flags for comparing, like the -n in strings, for digits, like dash sets, let's say?
what do you wanna compare to? Let's. bring
So
up-
just want to make sure, you know, yeah, here. So, the dash set is for string again. Yeah. Just wanted to make sure if we have any kind of these flags for number. So, I think.
So these three specifically are for numbers. But do you wanna check for 0 or something?
No. Can you go back to the
Sure.
case code? Okay, so you compare the number only is greater than, so we have the flag after that. I just wanted to know if, do we have any kind of flags before the number, like -n or -e or something like this?
Oh.
So it seems that we
Well,
don't have.
well, number
because
is
we
always
have-
a truthy value. I mean, what do you wanna check? I don't understand the use
Just wanted
case.
to make sure if the number is really a number.
value exists.
If the value exists as a number.
Like
So I
checking the
think the
type?
greater than is
Oh.
doing this, I think so, that's
it's
why.
like the logic that you
To
have.
check
to
the reliable it
like
exists or
some-
not.
You use some exceptions before you go in this phase, like before you can check if that there is a value for that one and that value is a number.
Yeah.
Is an integer, something like that. If not, you can break your application in the beginning.
You can check for with regex, for example, if it only includes. Oh, we can first like turn it into a string and then check if all the characters are actually number, or if there's any other
It
things
should be
inside.
simplified by the
I think it's not
bash.
implemented. We need to
Okay.
like write logic, right?
Yeah, and the second
Anyone
one, sorry,
knows? Sure.
I've seen that we have 2 brackets sometimes,
Yeah. The parentheses, right?
the brackets.
Brackets, yeah, was my question.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Anyone wants to take that?
I
I don't remember.
Me neither.
I don't remember.
But we can search it.
But mostly, they're using for loop something like this. I mean, when they are looping in a list, they are using 2.
Two brackets. Yeah, I've seen that too.
I know
We'll find
shell
out.
interpretation of some sort. It's how the shell interprets the internal component. If you have one, it interprets it one way in its truth value, and if you have 2, it has a different understanding of what the content is. Now,
So it's like a
exact-
condition inside a condition? Like,
No, you have open square bracket, your argument, and then you close it twice, has a different interpretation than one square bracket.
What's the
Content
difference?
and others, and then you close a square bracket. But how the shell reads the information is 2 ways. And that's the thing, the question that I don't have the answer is what is it, how it's interpreting the
Mhm.
content value.
Okay.
And what you can and cannot put in there for proper syntax.
I don't know, to be honest, but we can definitely check at the end. Yeah. Any other question? Yes.
I believe the
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, you use dash E in order to check if file exists. But you can also use dash F. What's the difference?
What was the second one?
Dash F.
F.
Yeah.
Oh, is the for maybe
It's a flag with find.
There is one nice way that you can check that. You can go to the terminal and type man bash, and you can see all the options are there. This is nice because if you are using old versions of bash, this flag will not be there. If you are using Unix, maybe this flag will not be there. So anytime you can go to the terminal, man bash, and you can see all the options available for that specific version that you have.
Okay.
yeah. It's a version that might be the same, you know.
So this is the same.
Yeah.
Dash F and dash E does the same thing.
Yeah, in your machine, you can type man bash, you can check on the terminal, you can see all the options. Eventually you'll see something like this, the same as this, the same as this, some of them are deprecated.
Yeah, with man bash with the double square brackets, it does say that using the double square brackets, the inside the double square brackets, the less than or greater than sort lexicographically using the current locale. So I assume the single square brackets don't do that. Personally, I just use the double square brackets and be done with it, but,
I think we need to put that in the part 2, intermediate to advanced.
yeah, it's kind of an edge case indeed.
Yeah, but that was a good one. Beautiful. Let's go through the loops. What time is it? All right. So we got a regular for loop. Just print out for loop so that we know what's happening, and then in a double parentheses, we start from 1, unless it's less than equal 5, b++. It's kind of pretty straightforward like other languages. Instead of then here, as we saw in if, we have do, so we say for this amount of time, do this, whatever block is saying, and then done, be done with it. So it's gonna say iteration $i, which is the our counter. It's gonna start from 1 and goes to 5. I'm gonna run them all together at the end. This is a for loop with an array. So we define fruits, different strings containing fruit names, and then we for loop through them. Say for fruit, this is a new variable we're defining here, in fruits, do print each one of them, right? And that's the syntax for that. Command substitution. So here, okay, by the way, in the same folder I have like text1, txt, text2, text3, these files, so I'm gonna work with them here. So for loop with command substitution. So I'm gonna say for file, which is a new variable defined in the for block, in looking for a variable or a function, and then ls, which lists our files inside the directory, do print those files. So technically it does the ls for us with extra steps. We're just gonna loop through the current file directory that we are in. This one is another syntax. So we say for number in from 1 to 5, it defines like this. We'll print them out. We got a while loop. We got a variable called count 1, and then we say while count is less than equal 5, well, do print them and count plus plus add the count and be done with it. So it counts till the condition is false, the condition of while. And until loop, for example, starts from 10. It says until the number is equal to 5, yeah, do this. And it keeps printing until it gets to the 5. Yeah, so let's just run, oh, sorry, here. Page 4, oops, ls. It's orange, I'm not just gonna check the permission again. Alright, so yeah, the regular for loop, just gonna compare here. Iteration, then number goes through that, loops through the array. This is shows the files inside, which including the script itself, and then the 3 files that we have. This was the command. Another for loop, a while loop, and an until loop. So it does not print the 5. That's the important part. So when it's actually false, it's not going through it. It goes up to 6. But this one's less than equal, so it considers the 5 in. Any question?
Equals means, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Equal means it's not included, the last one you said? Number is not included?
The 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, so until runs till the statement is true.
Does it mean 5 item or, I mean, because we have 10, 9, 8,
Yeah, it's
7.
still 5 items,
So we
right?
have 5 items also.
Yeah, yeah. It says it's gonna check whenever the number equals to 5. It's just gonna stop and not gonna run the block of the code again. John, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm sort of confused.
Sure.
Because you have here on line 43, number equals 10.
Yep.
And then that's 43. And then 44 says until number equals 5.
Mhm.
So what,
Yeah, 46.
that doesn't, I'm not understanding what that means.
Yeah, it's not really common to use until, by the way. I've never seen it myself. They mostly use a for loop or while, but the logic is kind of reverse to the while. So while this statement is true, it's gonna run until this statement is not false. It's gonna run.
Until
So
is
unless,
run first and then check.
sorry.
The first attempt for the until is that if you use the until, we will execute the line 45 and 46 first, and then we check if the condition is true or not.
Do you mean it goes through the block first and then it checks?
Yeah.
But we don't have like.
For the while loop, you will check the condition first, and then you execute the line 46 and 37.
But,
It's the minute.
I'm not sure because we don't have the number 5 printed out here. Right?
Because in chat, the number 6 is the line 45. So the number is 6, and then you minus 1 and then check. So the log will be stopped.
So you can change the line 43, set initial value number to 5, then we can erase.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure that it's not gonna run this loop. But let's see. Yeah, nothing prints out. Just to this part. So I don't think if it does go to the block, it checks the condition anyway. It doesn't matter until or while. It checks the conditions always. Yes.
Are there like do while loops?
Keep doing this.
Do while.
Like it'll execute the
Oh, yes, actually, I think in the, I think, you mean like always true? It goes to the infinity loop, that's something like that?
No, it does like, it does what you were saying, the first block. The do compartment is do this, while this is true.
I did not find anything like that. Yeah, I don't think if it's exists in Bash. Anybody knows if it does? Like runs the first block of code, you know?
I'm not sure, actually, I think there might be, I haven't used it for so many years, I don't know the syntax of it.
I'm sure you can use while loop just in a creative way. You just have to think about it for a minute how to code.
Alright, let's go to the next one. Functions, beautiful. Alright, this is a fun part because we have the local thing here. So we got two variables. These are global, sorry?
5 strings.
You skipped one.
Oh my bad. It's so narrow from here, I barely can see it. Yeah, this was actually Alright, by the way, I have printed out things here. I wish I had it. Alright, anyway. String length. So, we got a string. We will echo string variable, and this is just a escape. So we want to quote that. That's why we're adding a backslash. And then string parameters, and then has. And this part gives out the length of our string. So this basically is the syntax of how can we get number of characters in a string. There are other ways to do that. This part is the same, so this is how we do it. We use the expression command length of this, and it gives out again the number of characters inside of it. There's a hidden error here, by the way. I want to see if you guys can point it out when you run this command. We can echo the string and count, word count -m, which counts the letters, and like pipe that. So I've done that in reverse. So echo string pipe word count WC and -m. That also brings out a number of characters. There is a awk command we can also use, which employs, I guess this is like a C, so it prints the length, something like that. We can also use this one. There are just different ways to find out what string do we have. Let's run this part. Something I have not included. Okay, let's go line one. Because we have not set it. Right. Just copy it out. Alright. So this is our string. This is the first way of doing it. I'll try that.
Actually shell. Or is it shell? Is it shell?
It's the Z shell. Why exactly is that?
The escape is exclamation mark is invoking history.
Yes, yes. Beautiful, thank you. So yeah, this one was making a trouble here. All right, so we have used different way of printing the string length, but one of them is 19.
This is because this skipping method,
Which one?
the skipping. You just add a skip. for-
No, that's not it. The escape doesn't add the characters.
Maybe the ending of the string,
Which line, sorry?
the line 11.
Yeah, something related to here, right?
Yeah, escape sequence
That should be
for the
here.
second string. You need to have escape sequence.
Escape or,
Oh, no, sorry.
no, that's not escape.
Maybe the ending of the string is the special character.
Yeah.
Like new line?
You were very much close, but who's doing it?
Hello.
Echo, thank you. You are so master, you should answer first.
To use apostrophe.
Sorry? So the main problem is echo by default,
Yeah,
add a
echo.
new line at the end. So when we write something, it automatically add a new line so that we can enter and have things in order. And if you don't want that, there's another flag you should use, which I forgot.
Minus N, yeah.
Thank you.
So why didn't we have the same issue with the last one? When
It
using
doesn't, it's
AWK?
18, that's fine. Yeah, the only one has a problem is
We
the
have,
third one.
we have echo in the last one as well.
Because awk command, take care of it. We'll take care of it, yeah. Yeah, we are using different commands piping together, right? So it's all, they're affecting each other. So let's just use -n here. So no new line, basically. And yeah, if you run this, not the whole thing. But yeah, sure. Was it the end for sure? Let's
You'll
find
have
out.
to go through your history and
Man
Man echo.
dash E.
Do not output. Yeah, that's correct.
yeah. I think it's the way you're running it again.
Before
Oh
the
yeah,
or after the.
you're right. You're right. Actually, my bad.
There we go.
Yes.
Yeah.
All 18. Cool. Moving forward, lots of things you can read. It's regarding the read command, and I don't need it right now. But all right, so we want to split the strings by space here. There are different ways of doing it, and we can change how we're doing it. So this IFS variable, as you can see, it's capital, so we can kind of guess that it's a system defined variable, as we saw earlier. And it does print out, well, a new line, and then parsing space eliminated text, and then the string that we have defined on the top. It's supposed to, all right, so the read variable, if we are reading from the string to the ADDR, I got confused myself. So it's reading, but not from the standard input. So it's not waiting for the terminal for us to put something in. Technically, it's reading straight forward from the string that we have defined above. I can copy paste it here so that we see it for later on. All right. And this is just another way of echoing things, right? So we just want to say that what we are doing, parsing space delimited text, which is this string, and welcome to Banlo. We are defining the internal field separator as a white space, just a single space. We are reading from the string by the read command as an array, A is for array, and we're reading into a new variable called ADDR or whatever, right? Then we are for looping through the ADDR's variable or array actually, sorry, and echoing out each one, right? Yeah, let's get this.
Is ADDR a memory address?
No, it's just a random variable. We can add any, put anything, name on it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just another. I don't know why you use that exactly. It's not really readable, but yeah, it's just a variable name.
Is the triple pipe symbol, is that like a here doc or here string or something? I haven't seen that.
It's the input. I don't know what they call the operation. But we are technically inputting from the string.
Yeah, no, that comes from C++, I believe. It's an input operator. Versus
C
going the
is
other
the
way
out?
is the output.
Okay.
One is the output operator and the other is the input operator.
Okay. Sounds good.
At least that's where I last saw it.
Can we say, we declaring another variable for string, which is, now instead of string, we have an array,
Yep.
right?
Yep. So ADDR is a new array that we have
From the string.
from the string, and it's space separated, so all the spaces are removed, and each ones are one of the elements in our array right now. And after that, we're just looping through that array and echoing out each one,
Yes.
right? Let's give this a run, learn new things. By not working, it's a bad option.
The 8, probably because of the bash.
Let's try bash. Some of them, yeah. Okay, yeah, it was a bash thing. So, running in bash, it works. It takes welcome to a malloc, and the thing is, it's not understanding the escape.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are workarounds, but that's fine. All right, let's take this one. So we got a CSV data, which is comma separate values. Instead of spaces, there are commas, and we want to parse this one now. The IFS is defined, and we say we want you to set the delimiter to be comma, and then we want to do the same thing.
So it's already come.
Yeah. There's no comma here. Oh. Yeah, that's mostly what I have for string. Any question that I might not be able to answer? Yes, please.
I have a very general question. I'm not super professional in Bash. I use it just for my convenience. And is there a good practice or some smart way to choose your way how to code? For example, you did 4 different times checking number of characters in string, and how do I know which one would be the best, which one will work in every shell and will work in future, for example. Because if I'm making my scripts, I want them to work in the future. Yes? Is there a good practice?
Yeah. So, yes, I think it's partly programmer's choice, by the way. As long as you know which kind of commands are you using. Where were we? Here. If it if it's up to me, I'll use the embedded one. Like this one is technically only bash, no other external command or program involved. So if for whatever reason bash in any version they try to change it and hopefully make it backward compatible, this shouldn't be changed. So in 10 years, 20 years, this is gonna work. But as long as you know that the echo, for example, has the new line at the end, or how are them exactly working together, you can prevent that for the future. I would go with less dependent on different commands, if I can. If not, I would definitely use them.
So you mean just to stick to the bash itself and use their own documentation?
Yeah, if it's enough for the job that you're doing, stick to it. If not, we should definitely get the help of different commands and different programs as well. Thank you. No worries. Mark, any other questions here? Yes, please.
On the line 44, you named your variable address, right?
Mm-hmm.
In uppercase. How you decide when you want to name it in uppercase or in lowercase? So
Just what do you like, I guess.
what do you like? But
Yeah. No? I guess so.
I think like that on in the start you said that like the uppercase
It's
system
not
defines.
standard convention, but you can definitely use it. You can
There's no
define.
rule, you just decide like whatever you want to
Yeah,
use.
yeah. I could define whatever, the thing is, we don't wanna accidentally name our variables whatever it's already defined in the system, right? So we suggest or be prone to use the lowercase ones, but you can use the uppercase and there's no problem with it.
A lot of times it depends on what you were working on previously. So if you were just doing some some Python scripting, you might use snake case in your bash. If you were just finished up a JavaScript program, you may find your bash script is full of camel case. It's not critical, but that's what happens.
Just style, right?
Yeah, the brain doesn't code switch terribly well at this age, I guess.
I have one more question.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I wonder if, is it the only way to split in bash? Because, you know, in Python it's much simpler, just
Definitely,
a
you
split.
should use Python, yeah.
It's
I
easier,
mean,
you know?
well, there are things if you have to do it in bash, this is how you do it, right? Yeah, but there are very easier things to use. If you can use Python for that,
I don't know,
definitely
in
go for
bash,
it.
if we have any other ways, because there's too much.
I only know that this IFS could be a flag and add it here. That's all I know. So you don't need to set it separately. You can actually use it as a flag. I did remember I have put it in my examples, but I don't see it right now. But yeah, this.
Thank you, okay.
I think it was dash D and then something
The
like
different,
this.
yes.
I think, but don't quote me on that. Check the read command. Actually, don't check it. I have it here.
We have the D, down
Where-
there,
where-
down.
Yes, that's it. That's it. So it has the actual. If it makes any easier, I mean, still I would, yeah. Parsing data is not a strong suit for bash. Yeah, they are very.
Just to add to that, my earlier question about the triple less than input pipe sign there, so it is a here string. So like a here doc, where you can sort of say, until you encounter this word, you take everything as input. A here string will just be on one line, and here string does not do. It does tilde expansion, parameter and variable expansion, command substitution, arithmetic expansion, but it doesn't do the word splitting and a couple things like that. So that's where the delimiter would be handy, because it's that triple left bracket pipe thing is not going to do word splits.
Oh, okay. Alright. Yes, please.
for the IFS, if you set it to one thing, let's say a space, and then you need to change it, like, it'll just keep reading it as a space until you change the IFS value?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So if you're, reading comma separated, and then you wanna change to tab separated, you'll have to change it every time. Yeah, or just not use that necessarily, maybe just in the, I don't know if that one changes permanently. Yeah, I don't know about that. But this dash D does the same thing as setting
There's
the
a change
IFS
in our script to Lego. If you work with functions, that will be right on that function.
on the function, yeah, that will make more sense, yeah.
So could you say that again?
If you have a plain script, if you have no function, and you
Yeah.
set yes IFS in the top, that will be right for the whole script.
Yeah.
If you have functions,
Oh, I see, I
it will be
see,
right
I see.
on it on the function.
Yeah.
It's also handy on a quick script that maybe doesn't have a function, or it's just on the command line, wrap the whole thing inside of round brackets. And now you've got a subshell running, so any changes you made disappear after it's completed.
So only for that show, yeah. Yes, please, sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can ask this, in this topic in particular, but, there's export and define variables, right? And what's the difference?
Export, so.
Export puts it into the environment.
Yeah, it will persist after your program exits, if it's exported. Sometimes if you just want something to last very temporarily, ephemerally, you might just say, like we saw with the env and then bash, just like, x equals y, program name with a space in there, and then when the program name is done, that line is completed and your x will no longer equal y. But if you want it to persist, then you might say export, x equals y, and then you do your stuff.
Plus export is, the export environment variable will be part, some of the shells, some of the utilities that you run will read an export variable.
Yeah.
It will be used to read the export variable. It's like, if you define a, say, Apple uppercase equals no space,
Yeah.
and then quote without space, and put some garbage in there, whatever, and close the quote, that variable that will just be in the shell itself and will be passed on to the next program. It will only be present when you're back in the shell. Can you access that variable? Will not be given to the next program. Whereas if you say export space Apple equals value, it will be in the environment when it does an environment lookup in itself, to configure itself. It will see it, and if it's gonna use that value, it will. And if it's not going to, it will just ignore it. Classic example is when you're starting, you wanna start, set up an X Windows environment to do an X shell, to do an X, so that's when you wanna use the exports. Whereas if you just wanna run a variable in it to run some program or something, and you don't care, you don't want the other utilities having it, you just define it as a variable.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
The last note, I guess export only exists till you shut down the machine, right?
No,
And
it only exists in the shell, and all children shells have it.
Okay.
All
Alright.
children that are executed from that shell,
Mhm.
but if you open up another terminal, it won't have
It's
that.
not there.
It's only shell dependent,
Mhm.
and it's only defined at the shell creation in the RC file, or when you do it by hand. So if you want it in every shell,
Yeah.
you put it in your RC file, so every shell will read that file, set themselves up that way.
Yeah,
Else it will, if you type it in the command line, it will only persist in that shell and all children of that
Right.
shell.
You won't access the
Thank you.
environment locally. It's
Yeah,
just
it
in
won't
one
be, it
session.
won't pass between two different
It's
shells.
just one session.
One shell and it's children shells. So if you have two X terms,
Yes, yes, I got it.
Which are two shells?
Yes, yes, yes.
they will not pass, the exports will not be passed between them.
It's like you have your script call another script, that will be another shell. Each
Yes,
shell will be able to read the first one, that verb.
that's the parent ID. Yes, so, we're having a bit of a time crunch here, so I'm gonna go a little bit faster because I really like the last part. I put the good things for the last. And I'm afraid that I'm not gonna make it, so.
We have,
I'm having a.
10
FOMO here.
minutes if we get like out of here quickly, because we have to clean
Sure.
up the room for them.
Amazing. So, yeah. Here we're going through some function stuff. So we got like two global variable, which is technically accessible in the global session, and then we have a function called myvar. It's the syntax is I guess you all know the syntax of a function. It's pretty similar to others, and then we define with the same name. We define a local variable called v1. We put the value c inside, and then the v2 with the variable d. Then we echo inside function. We get those two variables, and then we get again the variables, and we'll see how it's behaving. Oh, actually, first we see them out, then we run the command, then we see them after execution. So technically, one should be changed and one should just stay there for the as a one should persist and one not. So before execution, it was AB as we defined it. Yes. And inside, both has changed. Outside, the global one remained changed. And just because.
Just the V2?
Just the V2. The
The local
D
one just-
stays and the A stays from the global. So this one did not change because we have defined a local with the same name. So we didn't change it, but because we have access to global here and change the global directly inside our function, it changed the global value. So that's the thing with the global. We can always wrap sets of commands in our function, and there's a $ number thing, and also some other which I'll show. So this $1, it's actually started with 0. So 0 is the name of the file that we are running, and 1 to n is the number of argument or each arguments that we are passing. So echo hello $1, it says hello, first argument that we gave to the function. So here we are giving the first argument as vanlog, and here we are giving just again one argument to world. And okay, I'm not gonna put too many things together, so let's just run this. Yep. So it takes the argument, pass it in the function, it prints it out as it is. And if you have more arguments, we can call them, access them by $. Print arguments. So, well, actually, let's try this too. So this $ alone will return the value of the latest return function. Whatever that means. Let's move on right now. Oh yeah, thank you. That's it. So I'm just rushing through it. I'm missing spots. At the end of our function, we are returning number 5 purposely, right? We can return any kind of numbers we want in any different, not any actually, that's the wrong statement. So, but we can define different numbers that means different things, like when you, for example, go to a website and it's 404, 404 stands for something, right? we can predefine our own return numbers so that it means something if it runs successfully or it failed or it's a pending state or different kind of states. So here we're just, when we are finished with the echo, we are printing out 5, assuming it means something to us. And if we want to check what was the latest function returned, now it might be changed actually, yeah, now it's 0 because we have run the echo function and that by default returns 0. So let's run our function again, print it, manlog, it prints out, and if we get the latest return value of the latest function that's run, it's 5, because we have returned 5.
So only a return one, not echo ones,
The last one returned.
just return one.
Yeah, just one and the last one, yeah. Printing arguments. So this is like really common if you like see a man page or anything. These things happen inside a lot. So for every argument in all the arguments inputted. So if you remember @, it gets out, spread out all the elements of array for us, and the $, it's the access, give us the access to each argument, so we can iterate through all the arguments given and print them all. Yeah, so I'm defining function here, and I'm using it here. And we have 1 argument, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We got 7 arguments. Yeah, let's see. So, first of all, we're printing each arguments with a tab so that we go through them all. So these are all the arguments we have received for our function. And then the first one is bash 0, number 0. And the first one, if you remember, I said it's a program that we are running. So that's why it says bash. It's not actually in our string. First one is the actual one that we have inputted, and so on. It goes forward. You're just printing 3 of them.
Actually, it would be better to use loop here.
I have used loop to just go through it with tabs, but yeah, definitely. Here is just the for loop, only one, I think. All right,
Can
I have
we-
5
sorry.
more minutes. Let's just wait, sorry. I really want to go through this. So this is one of my hassles. Discord gets updated every day, and every time my system comes up, it says the new update, and it's just pain in the donkey or whatever. So it's just kill all the processes named Discord. So I make sure that there's no Discord running on my system, and then vget gets a URL, download something, -o output it. So I will save it in temp discord latest.deb, and then sudo apt install that file, and then remove the file after you install it. So whenever I see the update thing, I do not go to the website, download it, install it again. I just run this bash script and be done with it.
Automation.
Pretty good.
Yeah. All right, so I have another one, which I'm not going like thoroughly through, but just, so you might know zombies processes. Zombie processes are the ones that they lost their parents. So we had a parent process, we branched from it, we forked from it, we have a different program running, and for some reason, when the parent is closed, now it's actually managed by OS and it's not a big deal, but previously it was. When the parent closes, the child does not, in this case, and becomes a zombie, and system recognizes it as a zombie process. So I'm gonna create a zombie process, And here's the C code for it, just again, really fast. I'm just gonna create a process, fork from it, get a branch out of it. The parent's gonna sleep for 20 seconds, so we do our job, we have the time, because OS gonna kill the processes automatically, we don't need to worry about it. And then it closes everything. So parents gonna wait for 20 seconds, and the zombie process technically will exist only for 20 seconds. But before 20 seconds over, I'm gonna kill it. Let's go to 7 ls. Here we run this, but before I run it, I'm gonna open this one up, and I will say this one will run the kill zombie.
Right.
So
Would you please execute PS minus EF? Let's show for people. Zombie.
Minus DF.
Or
So
top,
you know
in
the
top.
It's gonna show us. It's gonna print out the ID, and it's gonna says that it's
Okay.
killed. So don't worry. I'm gonna create it. The 20 seconds started. All right, and I'm gonna come here, kill it. It prints out the child and the thing, and if you come back here, it says killed. So just demonstration. We don't really, it's not a real use case here because most of the zombie processes are actually eliminated unless there is a huge bug in the system. It automatically happens.
Zombie is not dangerous.
Yeah, not,
Fun
not
process.
anymore unless someone uses it very wisely, then it is actually, yeah.
We have system this system, we handle zombie process.
Yeah. So I had a small server which I run a GitHub activity calendar, by the way. If you want to put it in your portfolio, feel free to use, so you can find it everywhere in my portfolio as well. So previously the script of installation and reinstall every time I updated the repository was like that. I was removing the whole thing, cloning from the GitHub, making a directory that I needed, copy the environment file, the end file, to the file. I would change the directory, go to the directory, and then install and start. Now it's just Dockerized, so easier. I just clone it, build the Docker for it, and I will run in the IPs the way I want, and after it finishes, it runs the monitoring, the Docker PS, it shows the processes of the Docker after that, so I can monitor the status being changed and if there's no error and everything. Sometimes it stucks and keep restarting, and I just need to make sure of that. That's another way. This is the fun one. Yeah. So I've got a URL which gives us random pictures for the placeholder if you want to put anything up. This program can accept up to 2 arguments. So we can give out pixels of the photo that we want. So we want a photo with like 500 to 500, 1000 pixel to 500 or whatever, we can do it. And if we don't, it's just randomly gonna choose something. Use the random system-defined variable, gonna mod it through 500, so it gives us something between 0 to 500, and add 500 to it. So it's gonna randomly select 2 pixels from 500 to 1000, and randomly give us something. And if we give actual pixels, well, it adds them. So in this case, the URL slash like 1 pixel and the other pixel, oh, actually 1 and 2. First argument and second argument. And it's gonna download a random picture with the specific pixels for us. I can run this up with random, and I'm gonna give like, I don't know, like 300 to 700. Something like that. If I don't give out anything, it's gonna be very random. I wish to see the ratio. Yeah. And let's do like just one, so like 200. So the other one will be random. This has not worked, and that could be because of the API, not the code. But API does not accept maybe. Previously it was another URL, to be honest, and that one works very well. But and that API has been shut down, and I had to. Anyway, thank you all for the.
Give a hand to John.
Thank you so much.
And,
Sorry.
Okay,
for
that's
the last minutes.
wonderful presentation, thank you so very much. Okay,